Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming this morning. Welcome to the Ronald Reagan Building and International Trade Center. It's a special project of the General Services Administration. My name is Andrew Gelfuso. I'm the Director for Trade here at the building. I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome today's esteemed speakers, Ambassador Frank Lavin and Undersecretary of Commerce Francisco Sanchez, as well as all the esteemed guests here in the audience and members of the media. Today, you're here to hear about an exciting new e-commerce tool. Export Now is designed to facilitate and streamline the sales process for U.S. exporters looking to do business in China. I can tell you this is certain to be welcome news for the U.S. exporters who, in my estimation, hear quite a bit of information about the potential of the market in China, but are concerned about the language barriers, the costs, the distance, and frankly, the unknown. And I think this product is going to be something that will be very enlightening and most welcome to the business community. The Reagan Building was opened in 1998. It was created to be a dynamic forum where public and private sectors could mix together under one roof, share ideas, and host international events that are open to the public, like today's event today. The Office of Trade Promotion works to fulfill our congressional mandate by promoting international trade and working with the public and private sector groups here in the building, as well as outside of the building, to spread the message that exports are good, they're important for our economy, and they create jobs. The Reagan Building functions as the World Trade Center of Washington, D.C., which gives us a wonderful relationship with World Trade Centers around the world. There's about 320 World Trade Centers in 90 countries, and we're brought together by an association based in New York that's nonpartisan and non-political. It's now a privilege to welcome back and introduce Ambassador Frank Lavin, who headed the U.S. Embassy in Singapore during the FTA negotiations. He's also the former U.S. Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade and has become well known in trade policy circles as America's salesman-in-chief. In those roles and in his current position as chairman and CEO of Export Now, Ambassador Lavin has spent years with U.S. companies formulating export strategies, suggesting creative marketing ideas, and assisting businesses. Implementing these strategies is essential if the United States is to achieve President Obama's goal of doubling U.S. exports by 2014 as set forth in the National Export Initiative. In closing, we're very pleased to host you here at the Ronald Reagan Building, and I look forward to hearing today's program, as I'm sure many of you do as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador Frank Lavin. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for those very kind remarks. Thank you, everybody, friends and colleagues, for joining us here today, which we think is a very important step ahead for U.S. business and U.S. commercial policy. And we're particularly honored today to be joined by the United States Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade, Francisco Sanchez. Before we turn the podium over to the Undersecretary, let me take 1 second and introduce the leadership team of Export Now, which is here today as well. John Hoover, our U.S. CEO, in back, waving his hand. Next to him, Seth Lavin, who's our Chief of Staff in the U.S., and Ron Wardle, our in the corner here, our Chief Marketing Officer. So please make it a point to, if you can't buttonhole me afterwards, to talk to one of them. But let me go to our honored guest right away. You know, every commercial initiative takes place in a policy environment, and one of the exciting attributes of the Undersecretary's role is the job he's done in shaping that environment so that it's as easy as possible for U.S. businesses to export abroad, and the U.S. businesses have as much chance as possible to compete effectively in those markets. And I'm delighted to say that it's with his help and support that we're able to get to where we are today in the launch of this successful undertaking. I also have to echo Andrew's comments that this is perfectly fitting with the theme of the moment, which is the National Export Initiative, which is how do we help these great U.S. companies go abroad. And here to take that point and to put it in a policy context, let me turn the microphone over to Francisco Sanchez for his comments. Thank you, Mr. Undersecretary.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We've already gone from morning to afternoon just in the span of the three people who have gotten to the podium. Andrew, it's great to be here. Thank you for hosting this today. Ambassador Lamon, thank you for that informative introduction, and more importantly, for letting me be a part of your show. I'm not the featured, I'm really not the honored guest. The honored guest is the really incredible product that Frank's going to be unveiling here. That Frank and I share a special bond. From 2005 to 2007, he served in the same role that I currently have as Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade. And I have to tell you that I got nominated in March of 2009, March, I think, 26th to be exact. And on March 31st, I think I waited about 3 or 4 days, I was Skyping with Frank while he was in Hong Kong, and I was here asking him everything I could about the job that I was about to undertake. And the lasting memory, it was very good advice he gave me, but the lasting memory I'll have of those encounters, and we had several, he became one of my tutors, if you will, is we would do these, he was in Hong Kong, so we would do these at 6 in the afternoon, 6 in the evening for me, at 6 in the morning for Frank. And you would think I'm the one that was just getting up, and he's the one that had been up, because he was full of energy. I assumed he'd already had 7 cups of coffee, but just full of energy and also full of a lot of insight. And I have to say, you prepared me well. It really is a pleasure and a privilege for me to serve in the same capacity that Frank did, except now in the Obama administration. And although we served at really different times, we shared common goals to support American businesses by expanding their opportunities to sell U.S. goods and services abroad. This is very, very important work, especially at a time when many Americans are still struggling. And so why would you say this is so important in that context? Because when businesses enter new markets, they can increase their customer base. When they increase their customer base, they increase their sales, and when they increase their sales, they hire more workers. It's that simple. Exports impact jobs. In fact, for every $1 billion in U.S. exports, roughly 5,500 jobs are supported. And putting people back to work is President Obama's top priority. And that's why he launched, as Andrew made reference to, and Frank did too, the National Export Initiative about 2 years ago. The goal was to double exports by the end of 2014. And we're doing pretty good so far. Exports have been a key driver in America's economic recovery. Last year, exports grew 17%, the second highest annual total on record. And it's the largest year-to-year percentage change in 20 years. They contributed to nearly half of all U.S. economic growth last year, and exports supported 9.2 million American jobs. So I think the facts are very clear. Frank has known them probably long before he had the job that I have. Exports are good for the American economy. And selling goods and services overseas should be a part of every business plan, especially in these rapidly changing times. We live in the age of transformation. Technology has brought us closer together and really has changed all the rules. And the pace of change is accelerating faster and faster. To illustrate this, I want to borrow from the New York Times columnist Tom Friedman's new book, which examines American competitiveness in the context of the global economy. He notes that just a few years ago, Facebook did not exist. Twitter was a sound. The cloud was something in the sky. 4G was a parking place. LinkedIn was a prison. I did not know that. Applications were things you sent to college. And Skype was a typo. Now in 2011, all these things are really part of our everyday lives. Technology has changed the way that we interact and the way we live. And it's naturally changing the way that we do business. For your local mom and pop store, the competition is no longer just next door or even across town, or even within a state. The competition is across the border and overseas. And to borrow a line from Frank's book, it's never been easier for a foreign competitor to enter a local market here in the United States. So it is absolutely critical that U.S. businesses are able to compete abroad. And it's important that business owners look at global trade as an opportunity and not a threat. After all, 95% of the world's consumers live outside the United States. Foreign markets are where the action is. For example, I just came back from APEC, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum. And as you can imagine, Frank, China was a big topic, and understandably so. Let me just give you some statistics. U.S. merchandise exports to China totaled nearly $92 billion, growing faster than our exports to the rest of the world. China was our second largest trading partner and our third largest export market, and our bilateral trade in goods exceeded $450 billion. Clearly, this is a huge market for U.S. goods and services. Now, unfortunately, as we all know, there are great challenges that often prevent American companies from seizing these opportunities. And that's why I really want to commend you, Frank, and all of your team at Export Now. The work to build new bridges between China and U.S. companies will help connect the supply and the demand. And as you'll see in just a few minutes, the e-commerce strategy is just the type of creative tool that can help U.S. businesses reach new customers and generate new opportunities in China. It makes selling to these markets easier and more cost-effective, which are two of the most important ingredients for success. So clearly, it's good for business, it's good for jobs, it's good for America's long-term competitiveness. And like all of you, I'm eager to see this demo. So let me close once again by thanking Frank for letting me be a part of this introduction of this new product. I look forward to working with all of you to expand opportunities for American businesses in China and everywhere else. Thank you very much. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Frank. Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank. Why don't we take a minute and walk through Export Now and the business model and what it does and how we believe it's going to advance U.S. businesses' ability to export along the lines that the Undersecretary just delineated. But let me put it in context for a minute and just try to explain it in general terms. Then we'll go to a PowerPoint first. I think we very much had similar experiences at the Commerce Department. Francisco's in the middle of it right now, and I had mine a few years back. But the point is this: we've got this enormous responsibility for export promotion to work with companies to help them be successful overseas. And so there's a lot of presentation, a lot of outreach, a lot of connectivity, a lot of sales, a lot of problem solving for these terrific U.S. companies as they grapple with international challenges. And I saw from my perspective that, there was a mixed message out there. On the one hand, intellectually, there was widespread respect and agreement for this core message that companies needed to get serious about international activity. So intellectually, U.S. businesses were very much in agreement with this point. But functionally, it was daunting. It was just intimidating. There are many obstacles. Most people in this room have some kind of international orientation or responsibilities. And for those of us who do this for a living, we're very comfortable in this space. But we also know, by the same token, companies that spend their entire life in a certain set of disciplines that aren't internationally oriented can find it very troubling to try to enter new markets. And there are a series of burdens and challenges that cumulatively make it very difficult. So it was with that logic behind, say, how do we bridge that gulf? What do we do? And we do this by, we set up a logistics channel and an IT channel and use the magic of IT and integrated logistics with overseas e-commerce to make it as easy to sell overseas as it is to post on eBay or Amazon shops in the U.S. So we've set up this U.S. to China mechanism so that U.S. companies can sign up in English from their desktop or their factory, their office in the U.S., just as you would sign up for eBay, ship us a product to Long Beach where we consolidate, take to Shanghai. We run a bonded warehouse out of Shanghai. We fill the orders. So now you can enter the Chinese marketplace just as easily as you can post on Amazon. For the U.S. merchant or manufacturer, everything they do is in a domestic U.S. setting. They deal with American account support. They deal with pay and receive in U.S. currencies. They deal with U.S. time zones. They ship domestically. For the Chinese consumer, everything that consumer does is in that person's local sphere. They pay in renminbi or in local currency instruments. They deal in Chinese time zones. They deal Chinese language support. So everything for them takes place in a setting they're familiar with. So we've taken the cross-border difficulties out of the procedure. Let me see if I can just walk through if I can handle this right. Right. So I think Frank correctly identified the challenge, that there's substantial amount of activity out of there, that we see U.S. products enjoy strong demand around the world, and the major U.S. companies have a very successful record in tough markets around the world. But on the right side of the graph, there are a number of barriers, we call them the soft barriers, that are daunting. And if you're a small company in particular, it's very difficult to allocate the time to figure out these products. And maybe of all of the barriers, of all of the disconnects, it's those bottom two. How do you identify customers, and how do you decide what kind of time to put against that? So sure, we can find a way to get to Mexico or Canada or France or China, but if we don't know where the customers are, and we've got all sorts of severe opportunity costs when it comes to time, how can we budget and do the strategic planning required? Well, this is where Export Now comes in, if I can do this right. So we offer this solution that makes you can post now overseas the same way you can post domestically. But I think the key point I want you to take away from this slide is the very last bold bullet, meaning the pricing model here is designed so that the U.S. company can sell in China more or less at the same price point as the U.S. and more or less at the same margin as the U.S., right? Which we would say, even if you go back a few years, would just not be possible except for the very top of the Fortune 500 companies. Now, we do this because we partner with the largest e-commerce platform in China, Tmall, which is also the largest e-commerce platform in the world. And I think Americans know that China is developing. They know they have a fast-growing economy, know that it's a very digitally oriented society. But even so, I think most Americans don't fully appreciate that bold line in the first sub-bullet, that there are 370 million registered customers on Tmall, and that they generate $60 billion in sales. So it's not just the largest e-commerce platform in China, but it is the largest in the world. And you could also say it's the largest phone book in the world or the largest billboard in the world. But this is a society, although still developing, is just more digitally oriented than we'd see equivalent activity in the United States. The United States has a better developed mall infrastructure, you could say, higher car ownership density, and for many middle-class Chinese consumers, e-commerce is the preferred channel. Now, how does this work? Well, if I can do that, let me just take you through the mechanics of what happens when you sign up. So this is the Export Now website. You register on our website as a U.S. manufacturer, reseller, seller. You sign up, basically the same mechanism you'd sign up for any other kind of e-commerce platform. The difference is your customers are in China, not in the U.S. You ship domestically because we consolidate in a depot in the West Coast. So you upload the product, you create the shipment, you can track it all from the website, integrated logistics. We take it to China. We run the service to China, take care of customs clearance, have a bonded warehouse. Any product sold in China has to have a Chinese label, so we'll take care of labeling, working with you on that. Stock it in the warehouse, and then post it. Your product description translated, your photograph, or adapted as necessary. This, by the way, is the Tmall webpage, so you can go to tmall.com. And by the way, it's worth clicking around even if you didn't take Chinese, because the search window is searchable in English. So you can go to that search window, you can type in Levi's or tennis rackets or electric toothbrushes or pet supplies or anything you want in the search window and see what comes up. Chinese consumers buy through Tmall the same way they buy any other product. We take care of order fulfillment, take care of all tariffs, duties, taxes, payments, and so forth, and then remit the funds to you. So you've got basically integrated back office fulfillment support situation so that you can sell into China from your desktop. Now, a word about Tmall. Mentioned 370 million registered customers. the most powerful e-commerce platform in the world, fastest growing market in the world. Extraordinary success currently for U.S. companies, but as we note, the only U.S. companies that can currently do this are the companies that run their own warehouse, their own flagship store, their own team on the ground in China. It's not extraordinarily expensive, but it's going to be prohibitively expensive for many middle market and smaller U.S. companies, especially if you don't know what your ultimate sales might be in China. So if your ultimate sales in China might be $1 million or $2 million, that's not bad. But if you've got to spend $1 million in IT cost and warehouse cost to set it up, it becomes prohibitive. So we've opened the door so you no longer have to be that top tier manufacturer retailer to hit that market. People ask what kind of buying power do Chinese consumers have? The short term, the technical term for this is PDI, pretty darned impressive. Meaning it's a wealthy society, it's got a ambitious consuming middle class, and it's got world-class quality aspirations, and American products fit very much with all of those needs. And we want to today highlight 4 of our exporting partners, 2 of whom are kind enough to be able to join us physically in the room. Let me just first give some samples. And by the way, we have goodie bags for everybody here too. So because you've been good. Wayne, you might not get one. The rest of you will get one. No, but let me just highlight the 4 products. One is the specialty sandals, flip-flops that are made by Feel Goods. So we have these. We have, secondly, a specialty car wash solution, wash drops we made. Third, we have a fascinating portable whiteboard that is called Wizard Wall, invented, produced by Mike Fogarty. Mike's standing in the back, and Mike is going to be able to talk to you more about this, but we're delighted Mike's here today to join us. And we also are very privileged to work with the largest producer and distributor of yarn in the United States, Lion Brand Yarn. And Evan Blumenthal's here today. Evan, I saw you. There he is, because Evan's here as well. So thank you for joining us, Evan. Thank you, Mike, for joining us. And to commemorate our launch ceremony today, what I'd like to do is to present the Undersecretary with his own goodie bag, which I'm told fits within our gift rules, right? So you're able to accept. So we couldn't get you the smart car we saw on the screen.
Oh,
But that's not American. What's wrong?
that's true.
You can't take that.
Okay,
Okay,
you're
we'll,
right.
we'll present you with this.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Francisco. Thank you very much.
Very good.
Good. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Very good.
Good. I think we have time for questions, if there are members of the press there, or we can break and take questions after, but I think there were some members of the press who indicated they had questions before, and the Undersecretary's consented to stay. Yeah, Alan. The goods are sent on consignment. That's a good question. The question was inventory. How is that arranged? Remember, this is a long tail model, meaning just as we see with domestic e-commerce platforms, some products will move quickly, some will move slowly, some might not sell. So what we can represent to American companies is this is the best and the simplest and the least expensive way to sell into China. We can guarantee that. What we cannot guarantee is what kind of ultimate success the product might enjoy in the market. That's up to the market, up to the product. So everybody's going to have different inventory needs. Some will replenish regularly, some will replenish slowly. But the company itself, the U.S. company, must absorb the inventory requirements. So, yeah, Jim.
So can you take sample products to trade shows?
Would we do that? Well, we're doing a version of that, which is we're working with companies who are going to trade shows, and we're saying the other way around. Why don't you leave the product behind? Right? The trade show's great. You'll see a lot of people. The people in Europe, fantastic, and that'll last 4 or 5 days. Leave the product behind with us, and we'll post it for you, and you'll have sales throughout the rest of the year. So we're trying to build off of that model, do that. So we do coordinate with trade show operators.
So you're like a freight forwarder in that you're not moving the product until it's sold.
No, because we keep the product in the warehouse in Shanghai. So the product's got to be in country. one of the reasons we don't have a lot of e-commerce now that's cross-border, it's legal now. I mean, people here, I'm sure everybody in this room has purchased something in the last 6 or 12 months through an e-commerce platform, a gift or something for themselves. But my guess is very few people in this room have bought something from another country's e-commerce platform. And there are several reasons for this, but one reason is logistics, that you see you're on a UK website, or if you read the language, you may be on a French website or Japanese website, you see something you want for $30 or $40, but it costs $30 or $40 to ship it. So you say it's not really worth the bother. And consumer confidence is the other deal breaker, to say even if I buy this product from London and I pay the extra $30 for it, am I going to be able to return it, or can I talk to somebody in London if I've got an issue? And it depresses consumer confidence when you move cross-border. So we fixed both of those problems. We said, let's take the product in-country on a wholesale basis and distribute and do customer fulfillment from Shanghai. So this greatly reduces logistics cost. If you do 3 things with logistics, you take out about 98% of cost. Ship wholesale rather than retail, ship sea rather than air, and consolidate rather than shipping LCL, less than container loads. So if you ship full container loads and those other 2 attributes, you will strip out about 98% of the cost. So instead of a $30 shipping fee, there's a $1 shipping fee. So it becomes, that's what we said, you more or less hit the same price point in China that you have in the U.S. So, yes, sir.
What is the price for, what's the cost of the service that exports now offer?
Good.
Flat price?
Good question about what price, what is the export now pricing model. There are 2 attributes of this. There's a sign-up fee and there's a transaction fee. Sign-up fee is $3,000. So for $3,000, you are posted for 1 year on Tmall, right? And that's 1 cubic meter of goods. So it can be multiple SKUs, or we prefer 1 product family, but multiple SKUs. Then there's a transaction fee. Transaction fee depends on several attributes because tariffs depend on which line item you are, and Taobao's fees can vary a lot too. We think the ultimate cost to the U.S. merchant will be about between 15 and 20%. And again, so there, again, the point about you're going to have basically the same margin in China that you have in the U.S. because you're paying something like 15 to 20% to get all the way through the system, but you're not paying a wholesaler, you're not saying a distributor, not paying a retailer. So it's your ex-factory price.
And Frank, is there a cost to have your goods in this facility on the West Coast?
No, because the West Coast is just a depot. West Coast is just consolidates.
So no
So
cost.
there's no storage there. Everything just moves out of the next container. So no, there's an ongoing replenishment cost. So if you're selling well, and your products are moving, and you say I'm dropping in inventory, I need to replenish, then that's a pay-go system. But again, that's no different conceptually than anything you might do domestically. So if you're shipping to Boise, Idaho, and you say, well, my product's selling out in Boise, I've got to ship. So that's good news. And we can take that ourselves through our logistics train, or you can just come and show up at the warehouse with your own provider. If you've got a better provider, you're welcome to come up from the outside as well. The smaller folks, of course, prefer to use our system. The larger folks might have their own system already in place. Yes, sir.
Is there a profile in terms of the products that would make the most sense to use for this model? I'm thinking of some of the more high-tech, intellectual property intensive products.
Yep.
Is there a danger there of counterfeiting and the like that we hear all the time about the China undersecretaries involved?
Sure. Well, we're all very sensitive to the IP issue, so it's a great question. But I can say first, to answer the question more conceptually, what we look for, we're an open platform, so our bias is to be supportive and be positive. We want U.S. companies to get in the export business. So we try to be helpful as we can. Our job is not to say no or we don't think it'll work. Our job is to say, look, if you want to try, we want to work with you and make a try. And it's not for us to try to guess the market. I guess this is similar, I think, conceptually, that eBay normally would, if you call up eBay and say, I want to post something and sell on eBay, they normally would say, great. They normally would not say, don't even try. So normally our starting point is to try to be positive and try to be supportive. However, you ask the right questions. Are there constraints or considerations that we ought to be mindful of? And there are certainly several. One is, our general bit of advice is try not to compete on price. It's got to be a brand or a product or an attribute where we think there'd be market traction. And you think of the great U.S. companies that currently compete in China, whether it's Apple iPads or Levi's jeans or Procter & Gamble products, But these are products that are very well respected by the Chinese consumer, and no doubt there are many other products we know in our home market here, but they just haven't reached China yet. So we're looking for product attributes or brand strength that I think allow the product to compete. Regarding IP, there's the very important point that we talked about when we were in government, and I'll just repeat now, the best defense is a good offense. And we talk to companies all the time that say, I'm concerned about what's going on in China. It might be piracy, but it might be a mimic. It might be a legal product, but it's mimicked. Or it might be some attribute is mimicked, or some part of it mimicked. To say the single most effective step you can take to combat that is to get into the market as aggressively as you can. And the example there is the iPhone, where there have got to be 50 different companies selling phone-type products that might be a white plastic shell, it might have some of the iPhone apps, it might look and feel like an iPhone. There might be some people trying to directly copy it. But just the message to Apple is go as fast as you can, because Chinese consumers are increasingly sophisticated and they want the authentic product. And I can tell you this, if your wife's birthday is next week and you promised her you'd get her a phone, don't get her the knockoff. You better get her the iPhone. And she'll know what it is and you'll know what it is, and it's a mistake not to treat your wife the right way. So the point is the Chinese consumers are as sophisticated as the American consumers. So my view is get these products to market and you'll be successful. Francisco, do you want to comment on that? Thanks. Sorry. Yes, sir.
Export now sounds highly automated, which brings up the marketing and translation question that a lot of companies have trouble, especially in China. So I think most Chinese consumers buy American products because they're better quality and more sophisticated. Does export now help with that translation when say you're describing the product on Tmall's website?
Absolutely. It is not automated. It is done by hand. Because you're right, how this is presented and positioned for the consumer is vital to make it as easy as possible for the consumer to find, to make sure that specific attribute is described in the right way. And if you use an automatic system, you can garble some of this or mix some of it up, and it puts the burden entirely on the consumer. But we say we have to put the burden on ourselves to present to the consumer the right way. So it's done by hand. Thank you. Yes, please. Okay. 欢迎你来，谢谢你来。No, we are very proud of our relationship with Taobao. It's a close relationship. It's a working relationship. When we first started this project over a year ago, we started it by flying to Hangzhou and meeting with Taobao leadership to explore this with them. And in my view, unless this idea met intellectually with the support and approval of Taobao, it could not be successful. Taobao is an open platform, so conceivably you can sell what you want even if leadership is not supportive. But in our view, this is a reasonably complicated undertaking. It involves us doing a fair amount of education in the U.S., not just the opportunities of the Chinese market, which I think many Americans don't fully appreciate, but also how powerful Taobao and Tmall platform is, which again, many Americans don't fully understand. So we said we are going to have to take a fair amount of time and effort to make this kind of presentation to American audiences. And so we like to have Taobao support. Taobao's been very supportive, and we're grateful for that relationship. Thank you. Yes, Ron.
How do you handle agricultural products, particularly packaged
Good question.
agricultural products?
Good question. How do we handle agricultural products? Good question. If I put that in a broader context, there are actually a family of products that require separate licensing or approval in China, similar in some respects to what might happen in the United States. But food is one, pet food is another, wine is a third, and cosmetics, sorry, is the fourth product. So those are four large family groups, each of which require license. Even if you were a domestic producer in China, you would have to, and you had a cosmetic product, you have to get that tested for safety before you can sell it. So we have to undertake the same activities overseas. We offer those services to producers. We are not ready to go with all those family groups today, but we offer those. So if you send us a test packet, we'll put you into the approval process. Now, ultimate decision is up to the government. But in general, U.S. packaged food producers in the United States do well in the Chinese market.
You do that on a fee basis?
On a fee, but yeah, and that's just a pass-through fee. That's not, I mean, what we want to do is facilitate sales. So we make our money off of your sales. So, good. Yes, sir. Brian?
Thank you. What kind of customer intelligence is received by the manufacturers in the US given that's got to be filtered from Chinese into English, such as customer demographic or location of customers?
Well, we share all data with the manufacturer, but you might not have sales locations, you might not have a lot, but you'll certainly get comments. There's a very rich mechanism with Taobao and Tmall of CRM activity, so that Alibaba, the parent group, has its own instant messenger service, Ali Wang Wang, Ali QQ, where people write in and they say, I like this, but does it come in blue, or I like it, is it a large size, or I don't like it, or it's too small, or whatever. So you get a lot of written material, written commentary back that's shared with the customers, but you don't necessarily get locale or age demographics on it. But good, thanks. There-
How many of the Tmall Taobao purchases are resellers or wholesalers?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Question was, how many of the purchasers are actually wholesalers or resellers? And it's interesting. I don't think it's easy to track this, but you can look, when you look at product and pricing information, if you look at Tabasco sauce, for example, it will say equivalent of $9.95 a bottle, or you can buy a case for $20 or something like that. I mean, clearly they're selling to a restaurant supply company or some kind of distributor. So a lot of the products sold are sold across the spectrum. It's in the consumer space, but it could be to an intermediary distributor as well as to right direct to the individual. So, good. Good. It looks like we've handled the questions. I'll tell you, we'll be able to stay around, and maybe the undersecretary can stay around as well if there are additional questions. And there's also beverages and so forth outside. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your support. We're going to hold that up again. Okay.
Frank, what about your book?